Hello friends, good evening and welcome to Super Coaching Regulatory Bodies by Testbook, and also welcome to the series of Ecologics where we are discussing the most important concept of economics in this series itself. So which are very important for the regulatory bodies examination and in every examination wherever economics component is there. So the topic that we will be discussing today is the revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. तो ये टॉपिक हम डिस्कस करने वाले हैं. We had started the discussion around the fiscal deficit yesterday. So yesterday we have discussed the concept of revenue receipts and the capital receipts, where I told you basically what is the basic meaning of revenue receipt and capital receipt, and also I have given you some examples so that you can understand the revenue and capital receipt. So today we would be understanding revenue expenditure and capital expenditure, and why this is important. This is very important because in the next class, in the next session, we would be discussing about the different type of deficits that we see in the government budget. For example, fiscal deficit, revenue deficit, primary deficit, effective revenue deficit. So these all deficit we would be understanding in the next session, and for that you need to have the understanding for revenue expenditure and capital expenditure, as well as revenue receipts and the capital receipts. So those who have not watched the yesterday's session, guys, you have to watch, because then only you will be able to develop the understanding with respect to the revenue and capital expenditure. Now, before starting, an important announcement. We have started the current affairs series on our YouTube channel, which is a free initiative for you. So those who are preparing for regulatory bodies examination, guys, you can take the advantage of this free initiative. This is completely free. So you know very well that in the regulatory bodies examination, the weightage and the areas of current affairs have been increasing over the period of time. So that is why we are covering all the possible areas which are asked in the regulatory bodies examination. For example, PIB current affairs, finance current affairs, RBI updates, government schemes, ESI current affairs, important reports. So all these areas we are going to cover in this particular as a part of this series. So the classes that would be conducted, that you can check here. So PIB current affairs would be conducted on every Monday at 6 p.m. by Pushpak sir. Finance current affairs session is conducted on every Tuesday at 6 p.m. by Madhav sir. Then RBI update session is conducted on every Wednesday at 6 p.m. by Madhav sir again. Then government scheme session is conducted on every Thursday at 6 p.m. by Prakash me. So that was conducted yesterday. ESI current affairs session is conducted on every Friday at 6 p.m. by me again. So today it would be conducted at 6 p.m. and important report session is conducted on every Saturday at 6 p.m. by Mahesh sir. So this is what we are going to cover in the current affairs series. And in these sessions we are not only telling you basically ki what is important and what is not, rather we would be telling you how it is important, how it is relevant from the examination point of view, and what are the dimensions, what are the areas that you have to cover in this particular news, and what are the dimensions, areas that you have to leave, right? So that over the period of time you would be able to develop the understanding with respect to the current affairs. Chali, moving ahead, guys. So if I tell you about, we have started a discussion around the government budget yesterday also. So I have told you basically कि government का जो budget है, same like our budget, हमारा भी एक budget होता है. हम जब job करते हैं, हमारे पास जब income आती है, तो हमारा भी family budget बनता है कि this much amount we will give as a rent, this much amount we will dedicate for the grocery, this much amount we would be dedicating for the petroleum expenditure. So हम भी एक budget बनाते हैं कि हमारे पास एक side से पैसा आ रहा है और दूसरी side हमारा पैसा जा रहा है. तो same budget is also made by the government, we see that government lays down बजट एवरी ईयर इन द पार्लियामेंट. ठीक है, हम देखते हैं वो. सो सेम बजट. तो बजट में क्या होता है बेसिकली, एक साइड से टैक्सेस दैट वी आर पेइंग, यूनियन एक्साइज ड्यूटी इज अनदर सोर्स, GST and other taxes is another source, corporation tax is another source, custom duty, non-debt capital receipt. What is the meaning of non-debt capital receipt? That I told you in yesterday's session. Non-tax receipt, इसका भी हमने discussion किया था yesterday session में. Then borrowings and other liabilities. This is very important. Borrowing and other liabilities. Though it is a liability when you borrow something, so that is a liability for you. But since you are receiving the money, that is a receipt for you. ठीक है, तो ये आपके लिए receipt होगी. And remember this, I would be discussing some very important thing with respect to the borrowing and other liabilities, right, which is 27%. So when government is receiving money, so government definitely will spend that money. So government would be spending on interest payment. Interest payment means the amount that government is borrowing, so government has to pay the interest on that. So under the government expenditure, interest payment is also the part of that. Government is paying pension, government is making money under the centrally sponsored scheme, government is transferring the money under the finance commission and other transfers, government is making the money under state share of taxes and duties, defense expenditure is there, subsidies expenditure is there. So the thing is, the government is having a set of sources for the receipts, and government is having the areas where government has to spend the money, right? So यहाँ पे basically what we are doing, we are dividing the receipt and the expenditure into two nature, that is revenue receipt, capital receipt in the receipt form, and revenue expenditure and the capital expenditure in the expenditure category, right? So yesterday we have discussed about the receipt. So we have discussed about the revenue receipt, capital receipt, what kind of receipt will be categorized as a revenue receipt, and what kind of receipt will be categorized as a capital receipt, that we have already discussed in yesterday's session. So today we will be discussing about revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. नाउ गाइस, जब हम बात कर रहे हैं यहाँ पर एक्सपेंडिचर की, ठीक है, एक्सपेंडिचर मतलब देयर इज डेफिनेटली कि पैसा गवर्नमेंट के पास से जा रहा है, गवर्नमेंट इज स्पेंडिंग मनी, दिस इज फॉर श्योर कि गवर्नमेंट यहाँ पे पैसे खर्च कर रही है, बिकॉज इफ आई एम सेइंग दैट यू हैव सम सेट ऑफ एक्सपेंडिचर व्हिच मींस यू आर स्पेंडिंग द मनी, राइट? तो सेम इज द केस विद गवर्नमेंट आल्सो. इफ आई एम सेइंग दैट गवर्नमेंट इज हैविंग द एक्सपेंडिचर व्हिच मींस गवर्नमेंट इज स्पेंडिंग द मनी, एंड इफ गवर्नमेंट इज स्पेंडिंग द मनी, सो दैट मनी वी आर कैटेगराइजिंग इनटू टू पार्ट्स, दैट इज रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर और कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर. पैसा तो गवर्नमेंट के पास से जा रहा है, लेकिन उसको हम बाइफरकेट कर रहे हैं टू अलग अलग कैटेगरीज में, कि गवर्नमेंट पैसे खर्च कर रही है रेवेन्यू नेचर के ट्रांजैक्शन के लिए, एंड गवर्नमेंट इज स्पेंडिंग मनी फॉर द कैपिटल नेचर ऑफ ट्रांजैक्शन. सो द थिंग इज, व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ रेवेन्यू expenditure and the capital expenditure? Look, whenever government is making expenditure where neither asset is involved nor liability is involved, so that kind of expenditure is the revenue expenditure. If I give you the example, so for example, if you are living in a rented apartment, ठीक है, for example if you are living in a rented apartment, so every month what you are giving rent, आप rent every month दे रहे हो ओनर को, so this is a kind of revenue expenditure for you. रीजन बीइंग, रेंट पे कर रहे हैं, उसमें ना ही कोई आपकी बेसिकली यहाँ पे ना ही कोई आपकी लाइबिलिटी कम हो रही है, ठीक है, ना ही कोई आपकी असेट क्रिएट हो रही है, right? So whenever in the government expenditure also if assets or liabilities is not involved in any kind of expenditure, so that expenditure would be the part of revenue expenditure. इसको भी हम एग्जांपल की हेल्प से भी समझेंगे. But when we talk about the capital expenditure, so any expenditure that is made by the government which either creates asset or reduces liability, so that will be categorized as the capital asset. For example, इंडिविजुअल के एग्जांपल से लेते हैं. सपोज अगर आपने कहीं पे लैंड परचेज कर लिया, ठीक है, आपने कहीं लैंड परचेज किया, नंबर फर्स्ट, या आपने पहले कोई लोन लिया हुआ था उसको आपने रीपे कर दिया. तो दोनों ही केसेस में क्या हुआ, पैसे आपके पास से जा रहे हैं, ठीक है, दोनों ही केसेस में लैंड परचेज किया आपने तो पैसे आपके पास से जा रहे हैं, एंड इफ यू आर रिपेइंग योर लाइबिलिटी, रिपेइंग योर लोन, देन ऑल्सो पैसे आपके पास से जा रहे हैं, राइट? सो इस केस में क्या हो रहा है, यहां पे लाइबिलिटी क्या हो रही है, लाइबिलिटी यहां पे कम हो रही है, ठीक है, यहां पे लाइबिलिटी विल बी रिड्यूसिंग, रीजन भी कि आपने यहां पे रिपे कर दिया, और या तो आपकी असेट क्रिएट हो रही है. तो ऐसा पैसा जब गवर्नमेंट भी खर्च कर रही है, आप जब पैसे खर्च कर रहे हैं जिससे आइदर यू आर क्रिएटिंग द असेट और यू आर रिड्यूसिंग द लाइबिलिटी, देन दैट काइंड ऑफ एक्सपेंडिचर विल बी द कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर फॉर यू. तो सेम इज द केस विद गवर्नमेंट ऑल्सो. इफ गवर्नमेंट इज स्पेंडिंग मनी एंड दैट मनी is creating asset or that money is reducing the liability, which means that expenditure is the capital expenditure for the government. But if government is spending the money, but out of that money government is neither reducing liability nor government is creating the asset, then in that case that would be the part of revenue expenditure. ठीक है, चलिए इसको और अच्छे समझते हैं. So what is the revenue expenditure? Basically revenue expenditure is the expenditure which is a ongoing operating expenses, जो गवर्नमेंट के ongoing operating expenses. For example, if you are an owner, ठीक है, for example if you are an owner of a company, so you might have hired multiple peoples, बहुत सारे लोगों को आपने यहाँ पे हायर किया हुआ है, ठीक है. सो उनको आप हर मंथ क्या करते हैं, उनको आप हर मंथ सैलरी पे करते हैं, राइट? सो दैट इज एन ऑपरेटिंग एक्सपेंडिचर फॉर यू. तो दैट एक्सपेंडिचर वुड बी द पार्ट ऑफ रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर फॉर यू. रीजन बीइंग दैट एक्सपेंडिचर इज not related to asset or liability. That expenditure is not creating any asset for you, and that expenditure is not reducing your liability, so that would be the part of revenue expenditure. So same is the case with government also. So revenue expenditure is basically an ongoing operating expenses such as salary payment. So government is giving salary to the central government employees, government is paying pension, government is providing subsidies. So out of all this expenditure, neither the asset is creating nor the liability is reducing. So that is why they will be categorized as the revenue expenditure. Then further, it does not result into creation of physical or financial assets. I told you whenever assets and liabilities are involved in any type of expenditure, then that would not be the part of revenue expenditure. That would be the part of capital expenditure. So same is the case here. Revenue expenditure does not result into creation of physical or financial assets. Next is, it does not reduce the liability such as loans. Yeah, because if you are paying salary, if you are paying wages, if you are giving subsidies, if you are making interest payment, so this is not helping you to reduce the liability. The loan that you have taken वो कम नहीं हो रहा है, वो borrowing कम नहीं हो रही, right? So revenue expenditure is not reducing the liability, and also it is very recurring in nature. It is recurring in nature. Recurring in nature मतलब क्या है? बार बार करना पड़ रहा है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल सैलरी जो है गवर्नमेंट को हर मंथ देनी पड़ रही है, वेजेस गवर्नमेंट हर मंथ दे रही है, ठीक है, सब्सिडीज गवर्नमेंट रेगुलरली प्रोवाइड कर रही है. सो रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर इज अ एक्सपेंडिचर विच इज रिकरिंग इन नेचर, जो बार बार यहाँ पे हो रहा है, ठीक है. एग्जाम्पल की बात करें अगर यहाँ पे, तो फॉर एग्जाम्पल रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर का एग्जाम्पल यू कैन सी ग्रांट्स. अब ग्रांट अगर गवर्नमेंट किसी को दे रही है तो उससे ना ही गवर्नमेंट की कोई असेट क्रिएट हो रही है, ना ही गवर्नमेंट की कोई लाइबिलिटी कम हो रही है. Salaries, if government is paying, so also there is no creation of asset, there is no reduction in the liabilities. पेंशन के केस में भी ऐसा कुछ नहीं हो रहा है. द इंटरेस्ट दैट गवर्नमेंट इज पेइंग, सो इंटरेस्ट गवर्नमेंट बोरोइंग पे पे कर रही है, राइट. सो दैट इज नॉट द बेसिकली, यहाँ पे लाइबिलिटी कम नहीं हो रही है. इंटरेस्ट जो यहाँ पे गवर्नमेंट पे कर रही है बेसिकली वो बोरोइंग पर कर रही है. अगर बोरोइंग रिपे करेगी सो दैट वुड बी द पार्ट ऑफ कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर. Subsidies that government is providing, that is also that also does not have anything with respect to the asset and liabilities. And law and order expenses जो हो गए, law and order expenses फॉर एग्जांपल जो हमारे जुडिशियल सिस्टम हो गया, ठीक है, जो हमारी पुलिसिंग सिस्टम हो गया, वो पूरा लॉ एंड ऑर्डर सिस्टम है. तो बेसिकली वो वहां पर भी जो एक्सपेंडिचर हो रहे हैं, दे आर ऑल्सो द एग्जाम्पल ऑफ रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर. एंड दीज आर नॉट द एक्सक्लूसिव एग्जाम्पल्स, दीज आर जस्ट the few examples which through that you can easily understand the concept of revenue expenditure. Got it? Then when we talk about the capital expenditure, so what is the meaning of capital expenditure? So capital expenditure is an expense for one time large purchase of physical asset, ठीक है. So either it is a परचेज ऑफ फिजिकल एसेट. देखिए आप अपनी लाइफ में कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर कितनी बार करते हैं, कितनी बार आप फिजिकल एसेट परचेज करते हैं, कितनी बार आप लैंड परचेज करते हैं? बहुत ही रेयर, हार्डली 4-5 बार करेंगे, मैक्स टू मैक्स 10 बार करेंगे, राइट. सो यहाँ पे सेम इज द केस विद गवर्नमेंट ऑल्सो. सो दैट इज काइंड ऑफ एक्सपेंस ऑफ वन टाइम, मतलब बहुत रिकरिंग नहीं होता. सो दिस इज नॉन रिकरिंग इन नेचर, बहुत रेगुलर नहीं होता है, राइट, नॉन रिकरिंग इन नेचर. एंड दैट इज यहाँ पे असेट. सो आइदर इट इज क्रिएटिंग असेट, क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट के पास से पैसे जा रहे हैं, तो या तो गवर्नमेंट ने कोई असेट क्रिएट किया है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल रोड, ब्रिज, डैम्स हो गए, स्कूल्स हो गए, हॉस्पिटल्स हो गए, राइट, दीज ऑल आर द असेट्स. सो इफ गवर्नमेंट इज स्पेंडिंग देयर मनी इन दीज एक्टिविटीज, देन दैट इज अ कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर, बिकॉज दीज एक्टिविटीज इज हेल्पिंग इन क्रिएटिंग द असेट्स फॉर द इकोनॉमी. Or does result into creation of physical or financial assets or reduction of liabilities. तो यहाँ पे या तो लाइबिलिटी कम कर रही है. आपको याद है मैंने फर्स्ट स्लाइड में बताया था कि 27% जो गवर्नमेंट ने बोरो किया था, राइट. सो इफ गवर्नमेंट इज रिपेइंग दैट बोरोइंग, अगर गवर्नमेंट उसको रिपे कर रही है, देन दैट वुड बी द पार्ट ऑफ कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर. इस बोरोइंग पर इंटरेस्ट पे करना इज नॉट द कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर, क्योंकि इंटरेस्ट पे करने से लाइबिलिटी कम नहीं होगी, राइट. बट जब यहाँ पे गवर्नमेंट लोन रिपे करेगी, देन दैट वुड बी द पार्ट ऑफ कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर. देन रिजल्ट इनटू रिडक्शन इन लाइबिलिटीज, दैट इज लोन, ठीक है. लोन हमने देखा यहाँ पे कि लोन यहाँ पे जब कम हो जाता है, सो दैट इज अ पार्ट ऑफ बेसिकली कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर, एंड दिस इज नॉन रिकरिंग इन नेचर. So what you have to think basically whenever if suppose in the examination, and this is a very favorite area of the examination conducting body, they often ask question from this particular topic. So basically whenever you feel confused कि यहाँ पे particular transaction is revenue expenditure or capital expenditure, just think one thing basically here कि whether this kind of expenditure is associated with assets or liability or not. If it is associated with asset or liability, then in that case that would be the capital expenditure. If it is not associated with asset or liability, then it would be the revenue expenditure. Got it? If I give you some example related to that, so example of capital expenditure, you can see expenditure on land, right, because land is an asset. So if government is making expenditure on purchasing land or acquiring land, then in that case that would be the asset. Asset is increasing here, then that could be the part of capital expenditure. Loan repayment, if I tell you, so loan repayment is helping in reducing the liabilities. So liability is reducing in the loan repayment, ठीक है. यहाँ पे liability जो है वो कम हो रही है. Then further, infrastructure expenditure is also a kind of asset creation. लोन डिसबर्सल इज अ काइंड ऑफ असेट क्रिएशन बिकॉज गवर्नमेंट इज गिविंग लोन टू समवन, और अगर गवर्नमेंट यहाँ पे लोन दे रही है जिसका मतलब है बेसिकली यहाँ पर गवर्नमेंट के लिए वो असेट है. Capital expenditure like railway, so that is also an asset for the government. So wherever, in whatever type of transaction, in whatever type of expenditure, if there is an asset or liability involved, if there is a creation of asset or liability is reducing, then in that case that would be the part of capital expenditure. ठीक है, और जहां पर ये सारी चीजें इन्वॉल्व नहीं होंगी, वी हैव सीन द एग्जांपल ऑफ रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर एज वेल, सो दोज विल बी द कैटेगरी ऑफ रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर. गॉट इट. नाउ अब यहां पे गवर्नमेंट के बजट होते हैं गाइस, गवर्नमेंट के बजट. फॉर एग्जांपल इफ आई टेल यू अबाउट द सरप्लस बजट, तो सरप्लस बजट का क्या मतलब होता है? yesterday we have discussed about the capital receipts and the revenue receipts, and today we are discussing about the capital receipts and the revenue expenditure. So whenever receipt is more than expenditure, then in that case that would be the surplus budget. Surplus matlab positive. For example, if you are earning rupees 100 in a month and if you are spending rupees 80 only, which means you are in the positive figure of rupees 20, so that would be the surplus. So whenever receipts are more than expenditure, then that would be the surplus budget for the government. बैलेंस बजट की बात करें तो इफ यू आर अर्निंग 100 रुपीज एंड यू आर स्पेंडिंग 100 रुपीज, सो यू आर हैविंग 0 रुपीज, विच मींस आपके पास ना प्लस में है ना माइनस में है, यू आर हैविंग द बैलेंस बजट. तो सेम इज द केस विद गवर्नमेंट. इफ गवर्नमेंट रिसीट इज इक्वल टू गवर्नमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर, देन विच मींस दैट इज अ बैलेंस्ड बजट फॉर द गवर्नमेंट. Number third is deficit budget. What is the meaning of deficit budget? Deficit budget is when expenditure of the government is more than government receipt, so that is the deficit budget. For example, if you are earning 100 rupees and if you are spending 150 rupees every month, so which means you are in the deficit figure of rupees 50, so that is the deficit concept, right? So when government will be in a deficit budget, when government's expenditure would be higher than the government receipt. So these all are the concepts which are very very important for the for you to understand, right? So the simple funda that I have given you, whenever you feel confused ki this kind of transaction whether fall under the category of revenue expenditure or capital expenditure, so you should have to apply simple one logic, whether any type of expenditure is involving is either creating asset or reducing liability. If yes, then in that case that would be the part of capital expenditure. If any expenditure is not helping in creation of assets or reduction of the liability, then in that case that would be the revenue expenditure. और ऐसे एग्जाम में क्वेश्चन बहुत कॉमन है, बहुत सारे ऐसे क्वेश्चंस आते हैं, so you have to keep this in the mind, right? So friends, this is all with respect to today's session. I hope you enjoyed the session with respect to the discussion of government budget, capital expenditure and the revenue expenditure. And in next session we would be discussing about the different types of deficits, which is very very important. So that is why I have taken the session for receipt side and the expenditure side, so that you can understand. And in order to understand the deficit, you have to have a very good understanding with respect to the capital expenditure, revenue expenditure, as well as capital receipts and the revenue receipt. ठीक है जी, तो ये आपको बहुत अच्छे तरीके से समझना है. Those who have not watched the session, guys, do watch the previous session also and this session also once again, so that you can better understand the things, so that you can understand the concept of fiscal deficit, revenue deficit, primary deficit, effective revenue deficit, etc. So this is all, guys. And guys, those who are preparing for RBI Grade B 2025 examination, we have launched the course for them, foundation course, which is Lakshya Batch. And as a part of Lakshya Batch, we are providing you the live classes, we are providing the notes, we are providing the MCQs, we are providing the descriptive writing, we are providing interview guidance program, we are providing one-on-one mentorship. So these all are the prime feature of the foundation course. And as a part of foundation course, we would be starting the things from very scratch, right? So irrespective of your background, चाहे आप कॉमर्स बैकग्राउंड से हो, चाहे साइंस बैकग्राउंड से हो, चाहे आप आर्ट्स बैकग्राउंड से हो, that does not matter, because the thing that we are starting, we have a mindset that you do not have any idea with respect to this particular component, and keeping this mindset, we are starting the classes. The classes of phase 1 have already started. Phase 2 की classes is about to start very soon, so you can check the schedule. The link of the course is given in the description of the video. You can check the link, you can click on the link, and you can see all the features, all the deliverables that we are providing as a part of this foundation course. And also friends, you can subscribe the course by applying the coupon code Prakash. So this is my name, and that would also work as a coupon code. So when you apply this coupon code, you can see a drastic discount in the final prices, right? So that will make the course more affordable for you. And also join this Telegram group. This is my personal Telegram group. After joining this, you, whatever query you have, whenever you have any query, you can simply post in the group, and I'll personally be resolving your query. And also along with that, whenever I have any update with respect to the important sessions, with respect to the examination, right, examination related updates, though that shall also be provided in the group itself. Got it? So there is a hidden benefits of joining the group. So do join the group, and also you can apply the coupon code. And friends, one also very important information, in the description box we are providing you the link of Google form. So whatever doubt you have with respect to the RBI Grade B examination, you can simply fill that Google form. Whatever doubt you have, whatever you want to know about the RBI Grade B examination, and our team will get back to you and will give you all the relevant information. ठीक है जी. So thank you very much for attending the session. I hope you enjoyed the session. I hope you enjoyed the discussion around the revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. So we'll come up with more such informative videos. Till then, goodbye and happy learning. All the very best.